Hi, friends. It's your girl Harpo. Welcome to this episode of Brown Girl Guilt titled Cool Girl Syndrome. I'm so excited to record this episode. For the last few weeks of my life, I've just been using the term cool girl syndrome in passing to really prepare myself and to get myself into the frequency to record this episode. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I realize that I really do suffer from cool girl syndrome. And I'm sure that a lot of you listening by the end of this episode are going to realize that you too suffer from cool girl syndrome. That's okay. We all go through it. We're going to unlearn it here. We're going to start to think about it. And then hopefully we can be ridding ourselves of cool girl syndrome. The inspiration for this episode actually came from a conversation that I had with a friend of mine, Gabrielle. So, Gab, if you're listening to this episode was inspired by our conversation that we had at brunch. And I love that that is where the root of this episode came from. It was just two brown girls sitting down, having brunch, eating, poached eggs and drinking coffee. And that's how this episode came to be. Now, what is cool girl syndrome? Cool girl syndrome is when it's a girl who acts like one of the guys. She's super chill. She doesn't really rock the boat. And there's a lot of like pick me energy attached to cool girl syndrome. It's someone who isn't like other girls. And I'm putting air quotes into that. It's this idea of like conforming to an idea of who you should be, what you should be, actively making yourself uncomfortable and small to fit into an idea of what's cool. It's really making yourself palatable to other people so that you're not causing disruption, you're not necessarily, causing any friction. And so cool girl syndrome is when you just try to act like a cool girl. And for the most part, acting like a cool girl means that like you don't have needs, you don't have opinions, you don't have feelings, you're chill, you're just going through life. An example of cool girl syndrome is right there in my teenage years. Like right there in my teenage years, I suffered from cool girl syndrome at the height. When I was in high school, I was like the smart girl. I was the, really, I wouldn't say like I was like the nerdy girl, but I was the smart girl who always did her homework, who always paid attention in class, was always on time. And a lot of boys around me actually used to cheat off of me, 100%. Surprise, surprise. They really used to cheat off of me. They would want answers during tests. They would want me to give them notes. They would want to copy my assignments. And at the root of all of that, like it used to make me incredibly uncomfortable because I was such like a quote unquote good girl, goody two shoes. I always follow the rules. Cheating obviously is against the rules. And so it used to make me so uncomfortable, but I suffered from such strong cool girl syndrome that I let them. I always let them cheat off of me. I always gave them answers. I always let them copy my assignments. Or if we were in group projects, I just let them, do no work at all and do all the work myself and then share the grade and not even tell the teacher that I was the one doing all the work. And beyond like just like being the smart girl, being the girl that gave everyone answers, cool girl syndrome showed up in the conformity of my identity as well. I wanted so desperately to be a cool girl. Like I just wanted to be someone who looked cool, spoke coolly, just moved in a way that was really cool. And often, now as an adult, when you look back, being cool is sort of like not standing out. It's being like everybody else. And so, I used to wear this Adidas tracksuit jacket. Like it was like I had a bright hot pink one, fuchsia, and then I also had a black one. That to me felt like, oh, I'm a cool girl. Like, look at me. I wear the Adidas tracksuit. I remember like all the other cool girls and all these like celebrities had these massive sunglasses, like huge sunglasses, like really big sunglasses were in. This is before I found aviators and my life changed forever. But there used to be these like massive sunglasses. And I remember going to American Eagle and spending like $30 on these sunglasses that I never wore, but I just needed to have only because I saw a cool girl take a selfie with them and put the selfie as her Facebook profile picture back in like elementary school and high school. I remember like how all the cool girls used to wear TNA. Do you guys remember TNA? Like TNA was such a status marker. Like if you owned a hoodie that had TNA, like the massive TNA symbol on it, you were cool, bro. Like I remember like my pencil case was TNA and I had no reason to have a pencil case, right? But like I just had a pencil case that was TNA. I had like maybe like one pen, one eraser in it, whiteout because having whiteout at the time used to feel like you were really cool. But TNA was such a status marker. And at the time, like everything that I owned was like TNA. And I remember like if you were wearing a TNA sweater, leggings, and Uggs, like you were cool, bro. Like you were so cool. And the thing about being cool back then was like everybody looked the same. So like all of us had the exact same hairstyle. We had pin straight hair. Maybe we had bangs, maybe, but we had pin straight hair. It was long, it was jet black. We used to wear the exact same thing. We used to talk the same, we used to move the same. Cool girl syndrome was so strong for me that like I didn't even carry a backpack in high school. Like I should have carried a backpack. My binders were heavy, my textbooks were heavy, and yet I just carried one of those like zip up binders because that was cool. And we were also talking about this as a team that for so many of us in high school, like being cool also meant like something so silly, but like not wearing a jacket. Like you just didn't wear a jacket because you're like, no, it's gonna ruin my outfit. So you just like went to school not wearing a jacket. And so cool girl syndrome runs deep, it runs wide. And it shows up in so many different ways, right? For me, it showed up in giving boys answers and tests, but then it also showed up in really deviating away from my individuality. Because if you see my Instagram now, if you see me out and about now, like I love wearing clothes that are unique and different. Like I try my best to like thrift so that, I'm wearing something that nobody else owns, or I wear like really funky, spunky earrings. And so who I was in high school was really so deviated and so far away from what I truly was, but I wanted to be cool. I wanted everyone to like me and I wanted to blend in. And so if I pause and think about where this cool girl syndrome comes from, right? Like where the first instance of cool girl syndrome comes from, because it's not when you get to high school, right? It's not when you go to the mall and purchase your first ever TNA hoodie or Adidas tracksuit jacket. That's not where it really comes from. I believe that Kruger syndrome comes from our homes, right? It comes from our families. It comes from the first people that we're supposed to feel really safe with. We're supposed to be able to like really express ourselves with. Now, something about cool girl syndrome, another added layer to this is that there's a lot of like hurt that is bypassed when you are experiencing cool girl syndrome, right? So at home, what happened for me was I used to really keep quiet about my needs. I used to try and take up as less space as I could possibly. And I didn't feel safe enough to express when I had been hurt. And that's not to blame my parents at all, but it is to say that when our caregivers, our primary caregivers who are supposed to protect us, supposed to enforce safety in our lives, are not making it safe enough for us to express hurt, are not making it safe enough for us to voice our needs and express what our needs are, and to really come out and say that something upset us or disappointed us or hurt us, that's when we start to really deviate away from ourselves and we start to make ourselves small and we start to isolate ourselves from our true feelings. And so, if you can't have that conversation about at home about how you want to be different, or you want to go against what is typically happening in the home, or you want to express safely how you've been hurt, if you're not given the space to do that, you go the opposite way, right? You end up keeping it in as much as possible. And for me, it manifested into my cool girl syndrome because I wasn't able to say it at home that I was hurt. So I wasn't able to say it out in public. And because I wanted so desperately to just not like rock the boat at home, to be a disruption to my already really busy and chaotic home life, I felt like I just kept suppressing and bottling it in and then just pretending like nothing was happening or I had no needs. If I really also contextualize cool girl syndrome beyond just like what happens in our homes, because again, personal is political, right? Like whatever is happening in our homes, in our relationships, are often an example or a representation of what is happening overall in our society, in our world. It's this, cool girl syndrome is truly like a function of the patriarchy, and there's so much misogyny that is attached to cool girl syndrome. So if, cool girl syndrome is suppressing your needs and not vocalizing what you want and really being aligned with who you truly are and what your values are, then, what the opposite of that is that like expressing yourself and really saying what you feel and actually honoring how you feel. A lot of like expression and a lot of sharing your feelings are considered like, I mean, for me at the time, I always thought it was like too girly, or that it was like too needy and like I needed to like be strong. And so if the idea is that expressing yourself and telling people how they truly make you feel is not strong, it's weak, often our connotations of weakness are attached to understandings of femininity. And so masculinity is always seen as strength, it's always seen as being strong. And so not sharing my feelings was considered strong. And that was me really embracing my masculinity. And then if I was to express how I would feel, which P.S. I could never really express how I felt without crying. So crying is considered girly. Crying is considered feminine. It's considered really needy and it's considered weak. And so I didn't want to do that. And so I used to exist a lot in this really like patriarchal misogynistic understanding of my own emotions, which led me into cool girl syndrome even more. And, I think like if I was to look back and speak to specifically my household, because my relationship with my mom, my mom was a very expressive person. She's really, an emotional person. And my dad, on the other hand, is not that. He's a very, quieter person. He keeps his emotions at bay. I mean, most dads do, right? Like most Punjabi dads, most South Asian dads, they really do. Most men in general, there's this concept of toxic masculinity that really prevents a connection between men and their emotions. Though those actually ended up defining my understandings of weakness and strength. And so I always considered emotions as weakness. And because my mom was an emotional person, I considered her weak. And because I considered holding it together and not expressing your feelings as strength, I always saw my dad as really strong. And what happened when I started to build those beliefs in my mind was that there was like a really interesting trio that was built. A very, very interesting trio that was built between my mom, my dad, and myself, which basically was that anytime that my mom expressed emotions or she expressed herself, my father and I would exchange glances. And there's this tweet, there's this like, there's I think it's a tweet or it's an excerpt from something that I saw once, and it was basically saying that, this father-daughter dynamic where you're exchanging glances, you're participating in a subtle shaming of your mother. It's not actually reinforcing anything for the girl, because in the end the daughter still loses. And I think what it also does is it fosters this like pick me energy. It's what it was doing for me. I was like trying to, like, even in my home, in my own home, trying to assert myself over the first woman in my life that is the closest to me. And so I was trying to say, look, that person, that woman is weak, that human being is weak and I'm strong, and that's why therefore I am more deserving of respect. I am more deserving of love. I am more deserving of care, and I'm cooler at the core, right? And so it's weird because, we enter into this like weird competition with even our mothers, to align ourselves with, not necessarily like, I mean, I wouldn't say like we enter into competition with our mothers to align ourselves with our fathers, but like more so with this understanding of femininity and masculinity and strength and weakness. And so if that was what was happening at home, then of course when I went out into the real world, that's also what I was exercising as well, right? Pick me energy started at home, and then it really infiltrated my entire life outside of the home. Outside of the home, no matter where I went, I always experienced pick me energy where I really had to assert myself over other brown girls and be like, I'm cool. And so there's so many layers there, right? One is that I'm trying to really what's the word? Like I'm trying to be cool and palatable and attractive to the boys in my life and to the men in my life. And I'm doing it at the expense of asserting myself as better than the other girls. And it's not that I'm really thinking like, oh, I'm better than the other girls, but it's just that I am stronger. I am cooler. I am more, I'm more chill and I'm more deserving than the other girls. And so, in that way, like in both contexts, if we're constantly bending, right? If we're constantly changing who we really are and trying to one up ourselves over other people, all that cool girl syndrome is really doing is serving the patriarchy, right? We're becoming complicit in the misogyny without even really realizing it. And denying our own feelings, denying how we truly feel about something, right, is actually an example of misogyny, because at the core of all of it, what we're saying is that these emotions are, like emotions at all in general are weak, right? We're saying that we don't want to experience them and that they're lower. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to not express ourselves. And so overall, when we're experiencing cool girl syndrome and engaging in it, we're becoming complicit in misogyny without really even realizing it. And so while I was experiencing cool girl syndrome a lot when I was a teenager in that way, where I was like giving answers to boys, I was wearing clothes that weren't really necessarily aligned with who I was. It was all to like, really cater to this perception of me. I'm still experiencing cool girl syndrome as an adult. And it might not be, I'm not going to say it's more or less, but it is in very different ways, right? I'm experiencing and actively participating in cool girl syndrome in so many ways. The first and most biggest one is in my romantic relationships at the moment. I think that all the adult romantic relationships that I've had, I've always just been like the cool girl where, they can be like, they can say anything, they can want anything. And I'm like, no, I'm good, I'm chill, right? I put my needs on the back burner. And I feel like I'm constantly on the timeline of the partner. Like I'm always on the timeline of like somebody else's schedule, what they want, whether they're ready for a relationship or not, whether they want to hang out or not. Like it's always on their timeline. And often what happens in these romantic relationships is because the cool girl syndrome runs so deep, I don't want to be disruptive. I don't want to rock the boat. I end up stifling my own needs a lot and I end up not asking for enough space. And it's not to say that these partners are doing this intently or they're doing it maliciously. It's just that I have convinced them so deeply that I'm cool, I'm chill. And I mean, it'll come up often. There'll always be times where I will slip up and the cool girl syndrome, will drop for a second and my needs will actually spring up and then they'll get surprised, right? And then or they'll be like, "Well, I'm actually confused now because I thought that's not what you wanted." And so then left standing there really holding the pieces of all of it because it's true. I did convince them so deeply that I didn't have needs and that I was okay. And so, really, can I blame them when I act out and then they're confused, right? I can't really. Cool girl syndrome has also showed up in my friendships when I haven't been able to tell my friends how they make me feel, or, when I want to be supported for and cared for and loved for in one way. And yet, I'm experiencing love, care, and support in a different way. And so when that doesn't align, I feel like I participate in cool girl syndrome by saying, no, I'm good. I'm chill. Like I'm a good friend. Like you guys do you. Like I don't need anyone. Right. This idea of like not needing someone is so intrinsic to my cool girl syndrome. Even at work, it shows up, right? It's so hard to be like, hey, I think I deserve more. I think I deserve time off. Or I think I would really like for you to respect my boundaries of, communication or X, Y, and Z, right? It's so hard because cool girl syndrome tells me that I should just let people do what they're doing because it works for them. And it might not work for me, but it works for them. And being a cool girl means just letting them, right? Like if we go back to our definition, it's just actively like, it's just being super chill and not rocking the boat, and so, I'm not gonna ask for a raise because that means you'll have to go and find more funding for it, or I'm not gonna ask for time off because that means that everybody else on the team is going to have to do more work. I think at the core, what cool girl syndrome does and what I've been able to understand and rationalize as an adult is that it isolates you from yourself. Right? It's a disembodying experience because what it does is it disconnects you from what you truly want. And so, if what I want in a romantic relationship is to spend more time or is to, be able to call someone, have them pick up the phone, and if in my friendships, cool girl, what I truly want in my friendships is more respect, more love, and more care. And if at work, what I truly want is for you to not message me on Instagram and send me an email instead, the fact that I'm not saying those things and I'm not speaking my truth means I'm experiencing a sense of disconnection from myself, right? I'm misaligned. And I don't know about you guys, but when I'm misaligned, I make the most mistakes in life. I hurt people the most when I'm misaligned. When I'm not being honest with myself and other people, that's when I end up really hurting people. I don't hurt people because my heart's in the wrong place or because I've done it on purpose or I'm malicious, I'm competitive, I'm jealous. I only hurt people when I'm truly misaligned in my own truth and what I want. And the reason that I really have made a home out of cool girl syndrome is because of brown girl guilt, straight up. When if I think back to all the times that I didn't participate in cool girl syndrome, I didn't like really act like the cool girl and act like I was super chill and like nothing was a problem. I feel like I experienced more discomfort as well, right? Like if I think about this one time in high school, a boy was trying to cheat off of me and I didn't give him answers. I didn't let him cheat off of me in the test. And, at that time I felt like, no, you know what? I'm done. Like I'm done letting boys cheat off of me because it's so demeaning, it's disrespectful, and it's not necessarily aligned with who I am. Like I don't like cheating. And so I remember not giving this boy the answers and he was unrelentless for weeks. He was so nasty to me in class. He was so mean. He would call me names. He would put me down. He would berate me. And so, imagine experiencing that at like 14, 15, and then it having like impact long term. Of course, it has impact long term because the one time that I did stand up for myself, I didn't give into cool girl syndrome. I experienced something, that was unsafe, that was harmful, that was hurtful. And so, of course, I don't want to feel that way again. And so maybe it's just easier to please everybody else around me than it is to really please myself. And the reason that brown girl guilt is the emotion that I experience is because I'm supposed to be quiet. I'm supposed to take up less space. I'm supposed to put everybody else in front of me. And so, like, brown girl guilt is intrinsically connected to cool girl syndrome because I only act out of cool girl syndrome because I have brown girl guilt. And I think that no matter what I do, right, whether I choose to actually participate in Kugel syndrome, like whether I choose to not participate in it, whether I'm standing my ground and saying, no, I'm going to stand true to who I am, no matter what I do, I feel like I always experience the brown girl guilt. The sense of guilt is always there, and the sense of judgment is always there as well. It's like I'm judging myself for participating in the cool girl syndrome, and then I'm judging myself for not participating in it. I think that judgment is still such a strong emotion as it relates to the brown girl guilt of cool girl syndrome that I'm not able to let go of it. And I know that it's harmful to me. I know that participating in cool girl syndrome, what it really does is honestly, it just makes me act like someone that I'm not, right? I don't feel like Harpo when I am participating in cool girl syndrome. And to be quite honest, like I'm already cool. Like I don't really gotta try to be cool. Like straight up. I'm just gonna, pump myself up and pump my tires for a second. I'm already cool. I don't need to pretend to be cool. I don't have to participate in a syndrome that tells me I'm cool, right? I am cool because I am me. And when you are acting like yourself, I truly believe this. When I'm authentically aligned with who I am, that's when I am the coolest, right? And honestly, what does being cool even mean? Right? Like when I was a kid, when I was in high school, being cool was like, oh, like I don't even actually know. Like now as an adult, I look back, I feel like I can't even physically put myself in that. But I think what I can do is really compare it to what it feels like as an adult. And I just want to say that real coolness, and I'm teaching myself this as much as I am saying it out loud. I'm really trying to hear myself as I say this. The real coolness is authenticity. Real coolness is alignment. And so what I'm doing these days, and I'm just starting. I'm still a novice. I'm still an end driver in this lane. And what I'm doing is trying my best to tell people what I want, trying my best to tell people when they hurt me, and just vocalizing it. And trying my best not to do it out of anger, out of resentment, out of discomfort, really trying to do it out of love. Saying to people in my life who are hurting me or have said something that has upset me, just sitting them down and saying, "Hey, I actually didn't like that when like that you did that." Or I didn't like when you said that. I didn't like when you made me feel this way, or using language like, I don't feel like I'm being honored. I don't feel like I'm being respected. And the important part of all of this when I am doing it is really understanding that this person is only acting out of their limited understanding as well, right? I like to believe that most people at their core are not bad people. They're not doing something or hurting us out of malice. I mean, yes, there's people in our life that do that, but for the most part, if I am saying that I hurt people in my life the most when I'm misaligned, then I really want to believe that people are also probably only hurting me because they're misaligned. And who they are at their core is not hurtful people, is not harmful people, not people who want to make me feel unsafe. And yeah, it still doesn't make the hurt okay. It doesn't mean that the way that they're treating me is okay. But all it means is that when I'm sitting down to address to these people that I've been hurt or that I've been disrespected or I feel unloved, that I'm honoring the possibility that perhaps that wasn't their intention to begin with. And to be honest, that is freaking cool.